Hello and welcome. In this video I'm going to be talking about how to use sessions and session tracking with session configuration. So let's first of all take a look at what a session is. Now as we know, both HTTP protocols and web servers are stateless. So what this means is that whenever a client comes into our server, that server cannot identify if the request has been coming from the same client who has been sending the previous request, and as far as the web container is concerned, each request that it gets is it identifies it as if it has come from a new client. But sometimes in some web applications we need to know who the client is. So for an example, if we take a shopping cart application, we need to be able to identify the client and then add items into the cart that is specific for the client. So in such kind of situations, we need to be able to keep some kind of a client identification, and for this we can use sessions, which basically refers to a state that consists of several requests and responses between the client side and the server. So now let's take a look at how a session works. So according to this diagram, whenever a client tries to access the page for the first time, the server will get that request and then pass it to the web container. After that, the web container will create a session ID for that request and then pass that ID with the response inside a cookie. And when that same client tries to access that same page with the cookie that has a session ID, the web container will then see that ID and then match the session for that ID that it gets, and that is basically how a session works. So let's now take a look at a practical example for how to use a session. And for that I'm going to first of all go to my NetBeans IDE, and here I've already created a new web application. So in this I'm going to now go into my source package, and then I'm going to create a new package inside this. And now I'm going to name this package as com.test.webapp, and then press finish. And after that I need to create two servlets. I'm going to name the first servlet as A, and then click on finish. After that I'm going to create my second servlet and name it as B. So in the first servlet I'm going to first of all erase all of this, and next I'm going to override the doGet method. And now in this I'm going to first of all create a session and store it in a variable called session. So next I'm going to use this session that I just created, and then I'm going to add an attribute to that session. So for that I need to type session dot set attribute. So in this set attribute function, I can give a name and a value for the attribute that I'm going to set. So here I'm going to just give it name, just give my name here, and after that I'm going to type response dot getWriter dot write, and after that I'm going to print this attribute here. So for that I need to type session get attribute, and then type name, and after that I need to convert this to a string. So now if I deploy this web project and then go to my browser, I can request for that servlet. So for that I need to type localhost 8080, and after that web application 8, and here we can see that my name has been printed. So if I go to the network area and then request this again, here we can see that there has been a session that has been created, and here we can see that a cookie also has been passed over here through the request headers, and here we can see the session ID that this cookie carries. So in the same way I can go to my NetBeans ID and then get the same session that I created in this servlet A from servlet B. So to do that, I'm going to first of all erase this, and then again I'm going to override the doGet method. And now I'm going to get the HTTP session object from servlet B. So to do that I need to type HTTP session. I'm going to save it in a variable called session. So to get the session I need to type request dot get session, and next I'm going to get the attribute that I put in that session in servlet A. So to get that I'm going to type session dot get attribute name, and after that I want to convert this into a string. Next I'm going to copy this and type response dot getWriter dot write, and after that I'm going to put that attribute into this write method, and after that I'm going to save this. So once this web application has been redeployed, I can go back to my browser, and then I can try going to servlet B, and now when I click enter, here we can see that my name has been printed on the screen. So that is basically how we can use sessions. So now let's take a look at session tracking. So session tracking is basically a way that can be used to maintain the state of a user. And in session tracking there are two famous methods that we can use to track a session. The first way to do this is by using cookies, and the second way is by using URL rewriting. So first let's take a look at what a cookie is. A cookie is basically a small piece of information that exists between multiple client requests, and a cookie is generally added with the response from the servlet, and cookies are generally stored in the client's browser. So now let's take a look at some of the advantages of using cookies. So here in the first point it says that it is the simplest way of maintaining the state of a client, and in the second point it says that cookies are stored in the client side, and because of this we do not have to worry about cookie storage. Next we have the disadvantages of using cookies. So in the first point it says that cookies will not work if the client has disabled cookies in the browser. Now as we know, in any browser the user has the ability to modify cookies. So in case the user or the client disables cookies in their browsers, the cookies will not generally get stored in the browser. So this will make it impossible for the web application to pass client identifications inside cookies. Next, let's take a look at what URL rewriting is. URL rewriting is the process of modifying or appending a URL structure while loading a page, and by using this method we can append a client identifier to a URL. So in the given example it shows how a URL will look like after we rewrite it. So according to this given example, we can see that the URL has been separated from the name and values using the question mark, and also the name and value pairs have been separated using the equal sign. Next, in the second point, it says that when a client clicks on the URL, the parameters will also be passed to the server and can be accessed from the servlet. So now let's take a look at some of the advantages of using URL rewriting. First, it says that it will always work whether cookies is disabled or not. So basically what it means is that it's browser independent. And in the second point it says that extra form submission is not required on each page. And in the third point it says that it will work with any browser. Next we have the disadvantages of using URL rewriting. First, it says that it will work with links only, and in the second point it says that it can only carry textual information. So just like cookies, we cannot pass objects. And in the third point it says that it can be very tedious, and the reason for this is because we need to keep track of each parameter that we send in the responses, and also we need to make sure that the parameters that we use don't clash with each other.